Okay, so these are Chapter 1 notes, your very first lecture. All right, that's as big as we can get it for right now. Hopefully you can see that. If you can't, you can ask what it says. Again, remember, please do not write everything down word for word. In fact, you might just want to write down the heading, Uniqueness of Humans, and then wait and listen and see what I say. Now, for those of you that did read Chapter 1, either over the summer or last night, your author in the textbook talks about human beings in a way that we don't often talk about them, as simply another form of animal. The same way you would talk about the characteristics of dogs, or tigers, or elephants. When you look at humans from that standpoint, objectively, taking a step back from ourselves, this is what you see. We've got some upsides, we've got some downsides. As a species, one of the first things you notice is that we are surprisingly aggressive with members of our own species and with our environment in general. We are a rather destructive species. You will notice this especially if you have younger brothers. Little boys break stuff a lot. When little boys play, on the few occasions that they make things, what do they make? Swords and guns. Doesn't matter what you give a little boy, they will turn it into either a sword or a gun. If you don't believe me, ask any of the boys in this room. They will tell you it's the truth. I made guns out of Legos. I made guns out of Kinects. I made swords out of Lincoln Logs. It doesn't matter. I would pick up sticks from off the ground outside. Presto, there is a sword. My brother and I would hit each other with sticks because we were fencing. This is what boys do. I'm sorry, I apologize for my gender. But humans are like that. We are unusually aggressive. Children stomp on bugs outside. They take perverse delight in it. As a species, we are aggressive. Now, if you've ever watched Animal Planet or any sort of nature channel, something else that you notice about human babies compared to animal babies is that ours take a long time to take care of themselves. You watch a giraffe being born. That thing falls 10 feet out of the mother, hits the ground, gets up, and walks. If a human woman gave birth that way, like baby just falls out, hits the ground, is it going to hop up and walk and be like, Mom, what's the deal? No, it's going to lie there and cry for the next 2 years. Human babies are amazingly dependent. They are not self-sufficient. They cannot care for themselves from day one. Baby fish can swim. Baby giraffes can walk. Baby humans eat, poop, and sleep and cry. That is the extent of their natural ability. Which means what for human women? Lots of crying at night. You are tethered to your baby. Your baby relies on you for food, for protection, for mobility. It must be fed and carried and soothed. Now, you learned long, long, long ago, what is it that makes humans so awesome? Opposable thumbs. Opposable thumbs are what make us so cool and what make us so versatile. What do opposable thumbs allow us to do? Manipulate tools. I've got 3 dogs at home. It's hilarious to watch them chew on a bone. You can tell how badly they wish they had thumbs, because they do the thing with their paws where they try to hold the bone. and they can't do it, and they start to chew on it, and it falls out because they can't hold it right. And they look up at me like, can I borrow your thumb? And I'm like, no, because you're a dog. They can't do it. That is a huge advantage for humans. You look at our reproductive rate. It's another thing that's surprising. It's not necessarily good or bad, but it's surprising. You look at dogs. My dogs were 2 out of a litter of 9 puppies that were all born at once. Yes, they are adorable, by the way. That mother had 9 babies at once, and that was normal. Can you imagine that with your mother? No. She gets pregnant and you plan on 9. It's ridiculous. The usual number for us is 1. And it takes roughly a year for that to happen. With other animals, it's significantly faster, it's significantly more. So again, unique characteristics. We can eat just about anything. Why is that beneficial? We can live everywhere, and we have more options for food. We can communicate not only verbally, but with facial expressions, which again gives us a wider range of communication skills. It allows me to go to a foreign country with a group full of students, none of whom speak Portuguese, and we're able to get by without any of us speaking a single word of Portuguese. Because we can point to something and go, And they understand that we want one of those, and we're grateful because we're smiling. Last interesting characteristic, there is only one type of human on the planet. Homo sapiens sapiens. We have a wide variety of hair colors, skin tones, heights, weights, builds, but we are all from the same species, which again makes us rather unique. Questions so far? Now, one of those questions could be, can you wait a little bit longer, please? Are there any questions? So if I click the button, nobody's going to complain, right? All right. So, for thousands of years, humans have been operating like that, with all of those different skills, tools, and characteristics. And then something happened. After thousands of years of wandering, after thousands of years of chasing food and picking food up off the ground, somebody stopped. Somebody went, these plants are here year after year. We keep coming back to them. What if we stayed? Then we would have food all the time. And we would know where our food was. And we could build more permanent buildings. We wouldn't have to travel as far. We could have more people to share the work. How great would that be? This is the Neolithic Revolution. Now, one thing to note right away. What do you typically think of when you think of revolution? A few years. War. Something violent and something quick. Right? Not necessarily violent, but usually some sort of upheaval. Okay? So some sort of radical change that happens fairly quickly. Does the Neolithic Revolution count as radical change? Yes. That is a very different lifestyle. Hunting and gathering to staying in one spot and eating one kind of food. That is radical change. Does it happen quickly? No. This is a process of thousands of years. So it's only half a revolution. I like that, yes. So the Neolithic half revolution. We can work with that. This is a slow process. This is not something that people necessarily wanted to adopt. Nobody was standing in line for agriculture the way that they are for the new iPhone. Nobody was desperate to get their hands on agriculture because hunting and gathering worked. Hunting and gathering arguably takes less time. I took my first hunting trip this spring with my father-in-law. He's been hunting turkey and deer in Pennsylvania for his entire life. He took me turkey hunting. I got my first turkey. That turkey fed us for 4 meals. It was a couple hours worth of work for 4 days worth of food. 1 or 2 meals a day. Yeah. That's a big turkey. I was kind of proud of myself. Exactly. So hunting and gathering works. And it doesn't take as much time as you think it does. Now, if you get skunked when you go out hunting, sure, you don't have any food for that day. But if you do have multiple people hunting and multiple people gathering, you're going to survive. That's not really an issue. But with agriculture, you know where your food is coming from, and you can grow a lot of one kind of food. It's a lot of work. If you know farmers, if you have farmers in your family, if you've ever worked on a farm, you are up at sunrise, and you are in the fields all day long. It is not necessarily easier, but it seems more reliable. So you can have larger populations because you know where your food is coming from. Because you're staying in one spot, you can have stable housing. If you're a hunter-gatherer, where do you live? You live on the earth in open areas with maybe some sort of portable covering over you. You're camping. You're camping all day, every day. If you are farming, what can you build?
Permanent structure.
Permanent structure. You can build a house. You can build a barn. You can build a water slide, whatever. And what does this mean for women? Women are no longer necessary for food production. Men can now do all of the food acquiring, which is going to dramatically change the relationship between men and women. So, gender issues. We're now going to have greater inequality. Men will now assume a more dominant place because they will now be solely in charge of food production. If you are in charge of the food, you are in charge of survival. If you are in charge of survival, that makes you pretty important, doesn't it? Girls are like, no. Culturally, what does this mean? It means you now have 2 cultures. The agricultural lifestyle and the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. What often happens when you have 2 opposite ways of living? Conflict, resentment, hatred in some cases. Farmers will now look down on hunter-gatherers as savages, barbarians. Hunter-gatherers will look at farmers as people that abandon a perfectly good lifestyle for easy food. Now, as soon as you have agriculture, you're going to see some other changes take place. As soon as you have agriculture and people are farming for their survival, you are tied to the land. Which means that, since I'm incredibly lazy, I can come over to Paul's farm and say, hey, Paul, I don't really feel like working anymore. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to threaten you with death unless you give me food. Your response is?
Leave my land.
No, I'm bigger than you.
Then I give you food.
Yes, you do. Thank you. I'm bigger, I'm stronger, I can threaten him. Now, if he were a hunter-gatherer and I said, Paul, I don't feel like hunting today. Go find me some food. What would you do? Leave. You don't need to come back to where I am. You can follow the food. You can live someplace else.
Don't follow or follow?
Well, if I'm saying I'm going to sit under this tree and wait for you to bring me some food, Paul's like, all right, I'll be right back. He never comes back. He doesn't need to. There's food over there.
I thought you said I like hunting today. And
Oh, no. But if you're a farmer, if Paul's a farmer, and I threaten him, can he leave? No, because if he leaves, what do you leave behind?
all your land,
All the land and the crop.
You leave behind your food.
all your possessions, pretty much.
Well, possessions aside, possessions can be replaced. Your house burns down, you can replace that. If you leave your food and you are a farmer, do you have the skills to feed yourself? Not for another growing season. Which now means you can have a hierarchy based on strength and power. If I am bigger and stronger, I can make you do the work for me and benefit from your labor. And now do something else with my time. Like think up more ways to make your life difficult. This is the beginning of government. The biggest and the strongest take power. And if you are not the biggest and the strongest, then you're at the bottom, doing their work. Exactly. Slavery. And the last major change that you see with the Neolithic Revolution, we already talked about this, disease. You have lots of people living in one space. Where do you put your garbage? Where do you go to the bathroom? Where do you put the carcasses of the few animals that you still hunt and eat? Yeah, it's all pretty close to where you are, and even if you bury it, it's still there.
Unless you dig it deep down.
Right. And at that point, you need the tools to dig deep down, which is hard. So this is how disease develops. All right, questions here? No? Does anybody need more time? Is anybody still writing things down word for word? Yeah. All right. Oh, real quick. What are all these pictures here for? I mean in general, not these specific ones, but why are there pictures on here?
Illustrated example for those who might help.
Exactly. This is something I would encourage you to do in your notes. Doodling is actually a good thing. Drawing pictures in the margins is actually a good thing. If things make more sense to you visually, do it. So, in all of these words, I summed up most of the ideas in 4 pictures. Farming, a field of crops, leads to, what are these? It's the gender symbols. Leads to issues with men and women. Here we have a cartoon, 2 chickens looking at a list that says it's some sort of pecking order. What is that talking about? Hierarchy, whether it's in society or whether it's in government. And then what's this neon green thing? Bacteria. So if pictures work better for you, doodle away, please. It will make your life easier. Same thing here. This is a lot in terms of words. If pictures work for you, use them. Now, this again is where you're going to be tempted to copy, 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 copy. Resist the temptation and stay with me. So, we need to talk about what a civilization is. We're going to use that word for the next 9 months. We need to be on the same page. What is a civilization? You have to have one thing in order to qualify. Yes. Nope. That's a good guess, though.
Is it written?
Nope. Good guess. A food surplus. You need to acquire an economic surplus sufficient to produce divisions of labor and social hierarchy. Translation? Look at it, read it, translate it. What does it mean in simple language? You need enough food to support people to do different jobs, division of labor. Not everyone is now farming. And you need enough food to produce a social hierarchy. So to be a civilization, you must be able to produce enough food that some people don't have to grow their own food, can have different jobs, which results in a social hierarchy. So if Paul is farming, and Paul grows enough food to feed himself and pay me so I don't kill him, do we have the beginnings of a social hierarchy? Yes. I'm the elite, he's my laborer. Sorry, Paul. Have we now divided up the labor? He's growing the food, I'm doing something else. Yes. Is this the beginnings of a civilization? Kind of, in the loosest sense. But we need some other things too. Yes.
Why is it social hierarchy still necessary?
It's necessary because it's inevitable. It's not necessary because it's something you want. It's not necessary because it's something that's good for people. It's necessary to have a civilization because it has to happen. If we are all just a bunch of farmers, and we're hanging out and we come over to each other's houses every once in a while to say hi and have dinner, and otherwise we all grow our own food, we don't have a civilization. We don't have a society. To have a society, to have a civilization, we all have to agree that we are living together as a common group. And what's eventually going to happen is that somebody's going to decide, I don't want to work. And at that point, if there is enough food, they will have that luxury to either become a political leader or a craftsman or a religious leader. And at that point, you're not the same anymore. And if you're not the same, you have to figure out how this system works. If we're not the same, are we still equal, or am I now better or worse than you? If you're farming, but I'm running the government, are we the same, or am I better or worse? If you're farming, but I'm making your tools, are we the same, or am I better or worse? If you're farming, but I am interpreting the demands of the gods, are we the same, or am I better or worse? This is what happens fairly quickly after you develop agriculture. You're going to develop, if you look at the second bullet point, a formal political state. Somebody like me will get lazy, threaten somebody else with death, take their food, and decide, I can now make people do all kinds of things. That's the beginning of government. Or you might have 5, 6, 7, 12 farming families, and conflicts come up. They're fighting over land. They're fighting over water. How do we resolve this? We need one person to make the decision for the group. All right, I'll do it. I'm the smartest. I will make the decision that we can all live with. All right, next conflict. We need a solution. Do it again. Oh, here's another problem. Fix it for us. All right, how about I just do this full time? Beginning of government. Well, if I'm going to solve everybody's problems full time, I need to be someplace where you can all get to me. I need to be in the middle of everything. And because I'm there, other people will eventually follow, whether it's going to be craftspeople, or people that bring the food, or people that need a place to store the food, which means you're going to develop cities. Cities become a place where you can store food, and because that's where the food is, that's where the power is. For these first few thousand years of history, food equals power. And that's what you need to remember.